Imagine being offered thousands of dollars to move to a place nobody else wants to live, not because it's dangerous, not because it's remote, and not because it's poor. In fact, many of these places are surrounded by mountains, vineyards, historic architecture, and some of the most beautiful landscapes in Europe. Yet local governments are willing to pay complete strangers to move there. At first glance, it sounds like a dream. A cheap house, a peaceful lifestyle, a fresh start, and sometimes a cash bonus just for showing up. But behind these offers lies a much bigger story. Because Europe is not paying people to move there because life is perfect. Europe is paying people to move there because some communities are running out of people. And if nothing changes, entire towns could disappear. Most towns do not die overnight. There are no dramatic headlines, no sudden disasters. Instead, they fade away slowly. One family leaves, then another. Young people move to larger cities. Schools lose students. Businesses lose customers. Doctors retire. Shops close. And year after year, the population shrinks. This story has been unfolding across Europe for decades, particularly in rural Italy, Spain, Greece, and parts of Eastern Europe. As cities grew larger and wealthier, younger generations followed the opportunities, the jobs, the universities, the technology sector, the financial centers. The villages were left behind. The young left, the elderly stayed. Birth rates declined, populations aged, and some communities entered a downward spiral. Fewer residents meant fewer services. Fewer services made the village less attractive, which caused even more people to leave. The cycle repeated itself again and again. Eventually, local governments realized something alarming. You can repair roads, you can renovate buildings, you can restore historic landmarks, but how do you replace an entire generation that has already left? For some communities, the answer seemed obvious. If people won't come naturally, give them a reason to come. And that's exactly what happened. The world first noticed when Italian towns began making extraordinary offers. €1 houses, relocation grants, tax incentives, programs designed to attract new residents from anywhere in the world. Suddenly, headlines appeared everywhere. Move to Italy. Buy a house for €1. Get paid to relocate. Thousands of people became fascinated. But most people misunderstood what these towns were actually offering. Because they weren't looking for tourists. They weren't looking for influencers. And they weren't looking for people searching for a 6-month adventure. They were looking for residents. People willing to stay. People willing to become part of the community. People willing to help keep the town alive. In southern Italy, entire villages faced an uncomfortable reality. They had beautiful scenery, historic streets, amazing food, centuries of culture. Yet people continued to leave. Young residents moved to Rome, Milan, Naples, and other major cities. Entire neighborhoods became quieter every year. So local governments tried something unusual. Instead of waiting for people to arrive, they started recruiting them. Some towns offered grants worth thousands of dollars. Others reduced housing prices to almost nothing. And a few became famous worldwide for selling abandoned homes for just €1. The idea sounded unbelievable, until people actually started applying, and many did. But Italy was only the beginning. Across the border in Spain, a similar crisis was unfolding. Large parts of rural Spain were losing population at an alarming rate. Some regions became so sparsely populated that journalists began calling them empty Spain. Schools struggled to remain open. Businesses closed. Young people left for Madrid, Barcelona, and larger economic centers. And just like Italy, local communities began searching for solutions. Some offered housing assistance. Others offered financial incentives. A few actively recruited families with children to help keep local schools alive. The message was simple: come here, live here, help us survive. The same story appeared elsewhere, in parts of Greece, in remote communities across Europe, and, increasingly, in regions facing aging populations and declining birth rates. But by this point, an important question had started to emerge. If these places are so beautiful, why aren't people already moving there? The answer is the part most headlines never mention. Because visiting a village and living there are two very different things. A weekend is easy. A permanent move is not. Many newcomers quickly discovered challenges they never expected. Jobs could be limited. Public transportation could be infrequent. Healthcare facilities might be far away. Internet connections were sometimes unreliable. The pace of life was slower. The communities were smaller, and for people raised in large cities, the adjustment could be difficult. Some stayed, others left, which created another problem. These towns weren't simply competing for residents, they were competing for residents who would actually remain. Because money can convince someone to move, but money alone cannot convince someone to stay. Yet despite those challenges, some programs have worked. Abandoned homes have been restored. New businesses have opened. Families have settled down. Communities that once seemed destined to disappear have been given a second chance. Not all of them, but enough to prove that decline is not always inevitable. And that brings us back to the question we started with. Why would anyone pay strangers to move into their town? The answer isn't really about housing. It isn't really about money. It's about survival. Across Europe, communities are fighting against population decline, aging populations, low birth rates, and decades of migration toward major cities. Some are winning, some are losing, but all of them are asking the same question. How do you save a town when the people have already left? And perhaps the most surprising part of all, this may not be a uniquely European story for much longer. As populations age across much of the developed world, more communities may soon face the same challenge. The towns paying people to move there today may simply be showing us what tomorrow looks like. What appears to be an opportunity may actually be a warning, a glimpse into a future that more countries could soon face. The villages paying people to move there are not trying to create growth. They are trying to prevent disappearance. And whether they succeed or fail may tell us something important about the future of communities around the world. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe to Behind the Map, because sometimes the most important stories are hidden in places the world has already forgotten.